3 times a day.
We would have the great schos, the Nasi Adar would come diving with us. How can I live with Shavi? How can I live with...
How do you know someone on your feet here? Yata? Yata, how do you know? How well do you know if someone's on? Talk. Hati, how do you know if someone's on? How do you know if someone's on? So how do you know if someone's on? How do you know if someone's on? What the fuck is that white thing?
That's blocking him.
Talking to you. Talking to you.
It's blocking the...
No point. I'll switch him. No, cutting it off?
No.
Wait, one thing. Oh, I'm eating this. Tati, 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 Tati. I'm eating this. Tati, can you look?
Yeah.
I'm eating this. Time. Yeah.
You want to go to Minute on time?
Yeah.
Or ask them at the show to pick you up?
Yeah, sure. But then I have to be done. Come on, time. Got him. Yeah.
How are you? Ah, I'm sorry for disturbing the empty nesters. Basically, I'm just asking. I'm giving a share from my office at 8 o'clock till 8:40. My mayor is here, and he wants to be on time for mincha. I was just wondering if you'd be able to pick him up from my office on the way to mincha. Yeah. And no, no. On your way, mincha's 8:30. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thanks.
I'm taking his candle. You people are married a lot here?
Yeah.
What? Why? I would think it would be for parents. It depends what it's about. And then you know, is it a conference call? A lot of those and expiring codes are like bad storage. Or all of them.
Good evening and good chodesh, everyone, and welcome to the monthly shir that is organized by the executive committee of the Alumni Association of the Yeshiva here in Cincinnati, which I want to start off by thanking each and every one of you for participating and being involved in the Alumni Committee Association, and a special thank you to the directors, which are Ibergeben and Gansen, to Habatzlocha, and the continuous connection between the yeshiva and the alumni of the yeshiva. And the Alumni Association has agreed to open up this year for the broader yeshiva family as well. I also want to make special mention that the yeshiva had just finished, just yesterday, its 13th year. And we know that when you finish 13 years, that's when the real bar mitzvah is. That even though we start saying Kapitel Yud Gimel when the child turns 12, however, when the child becomes a man is when he finishes his 13th year. Being that that's the case, so it comes out that the yeshiva had just finished its 13 years, and we have now reached the level of ish. We are now bar mitzvah. We now are more mechuyev. That means we get extra koyach from Hashem for our continuous hatzlacha. And I ask a bracha from Hashem that now that we are an ish, that should strengthen our ish, our fire of Hiskashrus, our fire of Avas HaTorah, Avas Yisrael, the Avas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the ish, Yud, which really is the union of ish, should be revealed and strengthened in a much bigger oifen. The topic of today's shir is Hiskashrus in 2019, as we approach Shabbos, which is 25 years from Gimmel Tammuz Tavshin Nun Dalet. However you understand Gimmel Tammuz, which that's a whole separate discussion, and a very important discussion, but a separate discussion, everyone understands that the challenges that we are facing today are very strong. The challenges to connect ourselves and our children with the Rebbe are very real. And in today's shir, we are going to try to address how does Hiskashrus work in Tavshin Ayin Tes in 2019? What are the ways that we can be mechanech our children and ourselves in the inyan of Hiskashrus? Every single tkufa, every single era has its specific challenges. And the challenge, the unique challenge that we are facing in Tavshin Ayin Tes in comparison to, I would say, even 10 years ago, is that now you, my dear alumni, who went through yeshiva, who are just getting married, having children, that they are thinking about this question. This is a generation that's raising children and whose parents themselves did not see the Rebbe with their own eyes. In other words, a younger man who gets married at, let's say, 23 years old and is having his first child now, if the Eibishter's brachas, he's 25 years old, and he's raising his child. This child is in a unique situation where he's being educated by parents and many times by teachers, by melamdim, mashpiim, madrichim, that they themselves, be'einayim hagashmi, did not see the Rebbe in most cases. And therefore, the challenge of Hiskashrus is that much more real and that much more strong. There's nothing like seeing. We all know the story of the Tzemach Tzedek, that there was a chassid that came to the Tzemach Tzedek complaining that he has sveikis in Amunah, he has doubts, faith in his faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Tzemach Tzedek listened to him, and the Tzemach Tzedek asked him, my dear chassid, do you believe that there is a czar of Russia? Those days, Russia was under the czar. So the chassid said, obviously, everybody knows that there is a czar. So the Tzemach Tzedek asked this chassid, did you ever see the czar? He said, no, I live in Lubavitch, who traveled to Petersburg, who traveled to Moscow. No, and he never saw the czar, he never left Lubavitch. So the Tzemach Tzedek asked the chassid, so how are you so convinced that there is a czar that you've never seen? So the chassid said, Rebbe, I have a cousin, and the cousin saw the czar, and my cousin is not a liar. And if he told me that there is a czar, I know for sure that the czar exists. To which the Tzemach Tzedek answered that look into my eyes, look into the eyes that saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I also do not lie. In other words, the Rebbe, being that he is so close with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, seeing the Rebbe, seeing eyes that see Elikus, inspire us to see Elikus. And even seeing eyes of Hasidim, parents, mashpiyim, that saw the Rebbe, those eyes, that certainty of the Rebbe's existence gets through to the next generation. But we are dealing now with a unique situation where the eyes of the child are looking at eyes that did not see. So how are we supposed to bring the Rebbe and Hiskashrus to the Rebbe in Tafshin Ayin Tes, 2019, 25 years after Gimmel Tammuz? So the first thing I want to establish is that while 25 years is a big number, it's a giant number, but we have the koyach to deal with the situation. First and foremost, it's not a law situation. One of the inspiring thoughts that I had when I was reading last week's Parsha Shlach, is that the Meraglim, they go to Eretz Yisrael and they come back with a terrible report. How the land kills people because Hashem made a miracle, that wherever they went, people would die, so people shouldn't notice them. That there's huge fruits in the land, and the people are mighty, the people are strong. And one of the points that the Meraglim say is that V'gam b'nei anok re'inu sham. We've seen giants. We've seen giants. That is one of the things that the Meraglim come back, that they are nispal from the giants. And the Gemara Soita goes through the names of the giants, Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. And the Lashon that the Pasuk uses, B'nei Anok Re'inu Sham. And the Gemara explains that they were so tall that it looks like the sun was a necklace around their necks. They were so tall, they were like sticking their heads through the sun. And the sun was like a necklace around their necks. That's how tall they were. Okay. So it occurred to me that giants are not necessarily only in time, in space, big. They're also in terms of time. 25 years is a giant. It's a giant amount of time. It's a quarter century. It's a lot. It's big. It's official. It's a big amount of time. It's a big anniversary, 25 years. And we tend to get scared of these giants. We tend to feel that if we've encountered a giant, we're not going to be able to succeed. But we have to realize that that is the time of the Meraglim. It's only the Meraglim that when they encounter the giants as they are supposed to enter Eretz Yisrael, do they retreat. Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them, Toiva Oretz Ma'oid Ma'oid. Hashem gives us the koyach. We have the ability to conquer Eretz Yisrael with the giants. Only we have to believe in the koyach that's given to us. The same is true with our giant. We're dealing with a giant in time. We are dealing with a giant in Chatichas Hazman, 25 years. And it's a big giant. But we will not be nispal from the giant. We lose when we lose our faith in ourselves. Like the Pasuk says, V'niyeh be'einenu kachagovim v'chein hayinu be'eineihem. And Chazal tell us that because in our own eyes we were like grasshoppers, niyeh be'einenu kachagovim. That's why v'chein hayinu be'eineihem. That's how we became chagovim in the eyes of the giants. We all have the koyach. We all have the strength. And because if we didn't have the strength, we wouldn't be put here. Because there's a whole different perspective. We believe that there is an Eibishter. And everything is bashgacha protis. And we believe that we are on a journey to our destination, to our destiny. We are on the journey. That's what the Rabbeim's neshamas came down for. We don't doubt that journey. And therefore, if the Eibishter put us in this challenge, and it's a big challenge, it's a giant challenge, but it's not a giant that we can't conquer. It's not a giant that we don't have the ability to deal with. We have the koyach. And not only that, the koyach is so strong that the Rebbe brings down in the famous Maimer of Eicha, the Maimer of Tisha B'Av, Maluk at Aleph in the Rebbe Sefer HaMaimorim, where the Rebbe brings down the pasuk that Moshe haya onav ma'oid mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama. The Moshe Rabbeinu was the biggest, the most humble person from all people that existed on the face of the earth. What gave Moshe that humility? What inspired him to be humble? What did he see that sort of made him take a step back and bring out the humility inside of him? So Chazal tell us, and the Rebbe brings in the Maimer, that he saw the generation before Mashiach. He saw people faced with a giant test, the test of 25 years of Gimmel Tammuz. And he saw that the people did not give up. They stood strong in their emunah. They stood strong in their commitment to Torah mitzvahs and to the shlichus that the Rebbe gives each and every one of us. And therefore, seeing us, yes, us, me and you, kleine Menschen, small people in a big olos, in a giant Elam V'Hester. But seeing each and every one of us is what inspired the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu. This brought out in Moshe Rabbeinu such anivus. He became so humble by seeing the emunah that we have. So we are blessed with tremendous koyach. And now we're just going to talk, how do we bring this koyach, mi koyach el hapoyel, from potential to action? How do we bring it out and make it real in the lives of ourselves, the lives of our children, and the lives of our families and communities? I want to share with you a story that Bashkacha Pratis I heard this Shabbos. This past Shabbos, Shabbos Mevorchim, Chodesh Tammuz, I had the privilege to host my brother-in-law, Rabbi Yehuda Levin, who's the Rebbe Shliach to Kensington, and he was by us for Shabbos, and we used out the opportunity that he should fabring with the Bochrim over Shabbos. And he said a story that happened in South Africa when he was on Shlichus there, and that story gave me the oisius to use to be able to express what was on my mind the whole time, because I knew I was giving this shir. And it's not just a shir, it's something that, it's not just a thought process and a theory, it's something that you have to actually live with. And I needed the right oisius to be able to explain what I want to say. And hearing this story told over by Rabbi Levin about an event that took place in South Africa really gave me the oisius that I felt that I can give over to you. One of the mashpiyim of the Lubavitch community in South Africa is a Choshev Yid. His name is Rabbi Yosef Kesselman. Rabbi Kesselman is the son of Rabbi Velvel Kesselman, Olav Sholem, and is more famous as being the grandson of the famous Mashpia of Kfar Chabad, Rebbe Shlomo Chaim Kesselman. I don't have to go into the whole description of the life and history of Rebbe Shlomo Chaim Kesselman. He was from the great Mashpiyim of our generations, a real Mashpia that built Bochrim and gave them over a Geschmack and Avodas Hatfila and Havana and Chassidus and Hiskashrus to the Rebbe. So Rabbi Yosef Kesselman, he seems that the year that my brother-in-law was on Shlichus, he married off a daughter. I assume it was a daughter because the wedding takes place in South Africa, or at least the Sheva Brachas takes place in South Africa. And by this Sheva Brachas, many of the local shluchim are there, and the Talmidei HaShluchim of the yeshiva are also invited to this Sheva Brachas to celebrate with the Mashpia. So the shluchim are sitting around the table, the Jungelite, and the Bachrim, Shluchim, Talmidei HaShluchim are there as well. In the middle of this Sheva Brachas, it gets pretty intense, and the younger man gets up, a younger man that was born and raised in South Africa, and he says, listen, Tayyid Shluchim, my dear fellow Shluchim, I was raised in South Africa, and I grew up knowing that there's a Rebbe, traveled to the Rebbe, Yechidus, dollars, whatever. How can I connect my children to the Rebbe? This is the question that this chassid from South Africa asks the panel of shluchim that are sitting by the Sheva Brachas. So each shliach says his piece, Hiskashrus, this way, that way. Every shliach is saying their inyan. When at the last person to speak is the grandfather, Rabbi Vevel Kesselman. I merited to see him many times. He would come Tishrei to the Rebbe to Crown Heights. A very quiet and frail person, not loud and dynamic like his father was known to be, or even his son, Rabbi Yosef Kesselman, is a eloquent speaking mashpia. Rabbi Vevel Shalom was a quiet, frail person. And nobody was expecting him to actually speak bichlal or befrat, to speak with passion. But he gets up and he says in Yiddish, Ich verstehe nicht die Shaila. I don't understand your question. Now, it may have been that the person thought that maybe he didn't understand English. And that's what it means. He didn't understand the question. So he's trying to be masber and explain in Yiddish what he meant by his question. So Velvel says, I understood what you said. I just don't understand your question of how to give hiskashrus to your children. And everyone around the table is like, what do you mean you don't understand? It's evident. It's after Gimmel Tammuz, you don't see the Rebbe. We saw the Rebbe, our children don't. How do we give that same feeling to our children? It's a very, very valid question. What does it mean that Rabbi Velvel Kesselman doesn't understand? And he said, I'll explain to you why I don't understand. He says, because I grew up in a worse situation than your children. Everyone's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? He says, I grew up in Soviet Russia, where the Frierdiker Rebbe had left Russia years before. And it was Pashat Sakonis Nefashis to be known to be a Lubavitch activist. Being a Lubavitcher meant a trip to Siberia, a free trip to Siberia. Having a picture of the Rebbe in the house was like the red flag. It was like the smoking gun. If they found a picture of the Rebbe in your house, so this was like the ultimate proof that you were a Lubavitcher activist and achaz dosei chas v'shalom. He says in our house, for example, there was one picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And that picture was locked in a box, inside a box, behind a bookshelf in a safe. And only once a month would my father go close the lights in the middle of the night and risk taking out that picture and waking us all up and showing us the picture of the Rebbe. And he said, yet with all that, the years that we never saw the Rebbe, we never saw the Rebbe. Knowing that the Rebbe is far, far away, we had no idea what was going on. No siches, no maimorim, nothing. Yet the flame of Hiskashrus was as strong as ever. And the Chassidim asked him, how did your father manage to give that over to you? He said it was very pashut. Because the real question is not how do we give Hiskashrus to our children? The real question is how do we live Hiskashrus ourselves? If we are living as Mekusharim, then our children will pick up the Hiskashrus automatically. He said, in our house, we knew that whenever there was a question of what we should do, where we should go, how we should act, that around the table, the question was always, our father would say, was wird gewollt der Rebbe? Was will dem Rebbe? What does the Rebbe want? So even though we never saw the Rebbe, even though we never heard the Rebbe, and Kam, we had one picture of the Rebbe that we saw once a month. The Ruach of Rebbe was so real. We knew that all decisions day to day in our lives was Rebbe based. And that Rebbe was so real that there was never a suffix of the existence of the Rebbe. And our Hiskashrus to a Rebbe that we never saw, never heard, was as strong as ever because the Rebbe was so real to us at home. And he turned to all the Chassidim in South Africa and he told them, listen to me, Tayir Chassidim. Today, you have more than anything. There's videos, believable, pictures, believable, hayrois, believable. There's unlimited access to inyanim of the Rebbe. The only thing that we have to do is we have to live the Rebbe ourselves in our own life. The Rebbe has to be a real part of our lives. When the Rebbe is a real part of our decision making of our lives, the Rebbe will be real to our children. And I want to elaborate a little bit on this very, very important point. There is a famous letter of the Rebbe. The letter Bashkacha Pratis is dated on Gimmel Tammuz. The first Gimmel Tammuz after the Histalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The first Gimmel Tammuz after the Histalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Rebbe writes that he is receiving many letters of condolences from many people. And in all those letters, the people are writing about how great the Frierdiker Rebbe was, how inspiring he was. He was a man of Mesiras Nefesh. He was a man of great, great Sidkus, a man of great Avos Yisrael. And all these verschiedene titles and descriptions. And the Rebbe writes that while these titles are all nice and right, he had all this, they're missing the main point. And the main point is that Nasi Chabad is the Roish B'nai Yisrael. It's not just that he's a tzaddik, Bal Mesiras Nefesh, Goin, that's all nice titles, nice descriptions. His Mahus V'inyan is that he's the Roish B'nai Yisrael, and through him, all Ashpois, Ruchnias, and Gashmias come to Klal Yisrael. This is a Rebbe. Why am I saying this, besides it being a beautiful letter of the Rebbe, written actually on Gimmel Tammuz? Because there are many, many times that we hear
and we watch or we listen to beautiful stories of the Rebbe, stories that happened in the early years when the Rebbe was younger, early years of the Rebbe's Nasias. And for us growing up in Tavshinai and Tess, even stories that happened in the 80s or early 90s, for all practical purposes, are early years for us. I was born 1981. So if you tell me a story that happened in 1988, for me, that's my early years. And these stories have a lot of lessons. Every time I watch the Living Torah, they have the My Encounter story with the Rebbe. You walk away not just with the appreciation for the moifsim of the Rebbe, but tremendous hadracha and chaye yoim yoim. But all too often, we can walk away from a video, we can walk away from a farbrengen, we can walk away from a story. And while the story was said to inspire, and it does, there's a little Yetzer Hara that comes in. And the Yetzer Hara says, "Oy, but what now? If only I had a Rebbe now." So while the father is giving over to the child, and the Zayd is giving over to the child, and the teacher is giving over to the child, and the Mashpia is giving over to the child, in Yonim that they lived with by the Rebbe and tremendous insight in Hayrois, the child walks away with a disconnect. And the Talmud walks away feeling, but I cannot experience that type of relationship. It is so vital that the child, the Talmud, anyone sees that the Rebbe is active today and affects their life. We know that by the Seder table, we say that if we don't celebrate Pesach, what happens? Big deal. What if our parents wouldn't leave Egypt? So what? We don't just say, well, what happened to your grandparents? It's important. We say, no. We would still be in Mitzrayim. Why do we say that? We say that because that makes it real for us. It's not a story of our grandparents. It's our story. If they didn't go out, we would be in Mitzrayim. All of a sudden, the Seder's a different Seder. It's our Geulas Mitzrayim. The same is true. The same is true with Hiskashrus to the Rebbe. As important, and it's very important, that the Talmud and the child hears and sees stories that happened many years ago. The most important thing for the child is to hear and see stories that are happening today. When a child sees at home or sees in school that when there's a question of what do, the way it's dealt with is we write a letter to the Rebbe and we get answers from the Rebbe. We get answers from the Rebbe. Yemel, there's no shaila if the Rebbe exists. A child could know that there's a Rebbe that he can't see. I was watching a story of Rabbi Levi Gorelik. He was saying how he grew up in Milano, Italy. So when you're growing up in Italy in the 50s and 60s, so of course, you didn't see the Rebbe until he got older. But he knew that the Rebbe existed, his father, the Ava to the Rebbe, every night, good night to the Rebbe, and celebrating the answers that came from the Rebbe. These are the things that make the Rebbe real to the child. And then it goes the next step. There is nothing like the answer that the child themselves receives from the Rebbe. The moment the child knows that when he has a problem himself, or there's something that's bothering him himself, writing to the Rebbe is a real option. And getting an answer from the Rebbe is a real option. Once that answer is received, The main question, if there is a Rebbe, doesn't exist anymore. It falls away. They say a story that there was one time a grandson, young boy, that walks into his grandfather's house and he pulls out a cell phone, like this cell phone. And the grandfather says, "What is this?" He says, "What's this?" "This is a phone." He says, "That can't be a phone." He says, "Why not?" "Why not?" He says, "Well, a phone needs a wire, it needs hooks, you have to see the way it's connected. And what you have in your hand is holding in your palm is a wireless. There's no wires. It can't be a phone." And now it starts getting heated. The grandson says it is a phone. The grandfather says it's not a phone. He shows him his old phone in his house. And it's getting heated until the father, the go-between, the intermediary, comes in. And he hears this ruckus. And he says, "What's going on?" They said, "We're arguing if this is a phone or it's not a phone." "Why is it not a phone?" "Because it doesn't have wires." So the father's a smart person. He says, "Give me the phone." Gives the phone. He calls a number, puts it to the ear. He puts it to the ear of the grandfather. And all of a sudden, the grandfather hears a voice coming out of the phone. And the grandfather says, "Now, whether or not I understand how it works, because I'm not a scientist, because I heard the voice, I know that it's a phone. I know that it's connected. I may not see the connection, but I do know that it is connected." And that's the same thing when it comes to a child seeing that the Rebbe answers today. When a child hears stories of the Rebbe today, not just hears stories, he sees that the Rebbe is a living part of his parents' avodah. When his parents have a question, when his parents are facing a dilemma, a big decision or a small decision, they're writing letters to the Rebbe. They're getting hadracha from the Rebbe. And the parents discuss this hadracha with the child, saying, "We are doing this or not doing this because of an answer that we got from the Rebbe." And the child knows that the Rebbe will answer. So the child also knows he doesn't see the Rebbe, le'es ato, but that the Rebbe is real, that the Rebbe exists, is not a kasha. It's not a question. And this has to be the yisoid of our chinuch, that we have a Rebbe today. Yes, Rebbe Yisrael. We have a Rebbe today, and we have a Rebbe that you can write to, get answers to, and there are moitzim rolling under the table, crazy stories of the Rebbe. I'll share with you one story that just took place 2 months ago. A himmel dike meise. There is a shliach that's building right now a mikveh. And they need a specific type of stone for the outside of the mikveh. So the shliach was told that there's a certain company in Canada that can make that type of stone. Company is owned by a non-Jew. The non-Jew comes to the Mokim Mashliches and they have a meeting. The meeting takes place in the kosher restaurant that has 6 people by the meeting. Right before the meeting, the shliach writes a letter to the Rebbe. And he says, "Rebbe, I have a very important meeting about the shlichus, about the mikveh, and I need hadracha. Give me a bracha that everything should go well." Instead of a bracha, hatzlacha, he opens up the English Kodesh. And inside there's a letter where the Rebbe is addressing a seemingly scientific question. And the question is, how can we say that the world is 5,779 years old if you could do testing and you can see from the trees that are millions of years old? And the Rebbe says it's not a question, because on day number 3, when the Eibishter created the trees, he created adult trees that looked like they were there millions of years. So on day 2, it looks like it was there 1,000,002 days. So of course, if you test it, it's going to look old because Hashem didn't create everything from a kernel, from a little drop. A man was created looking older. The trees were looking older. The grass, the animals, everything was looking older. He gets this letter. He's like, what am I supposed to do? Was a bracha for the meeting, not a bracha. What am I going to do with this letter? Rebbe, Aneni, Aneni, Aneni. He's rushing to the meeting. And the meeting, it's not going, it's not flowing, it's not firing. So the shliach speaks to the Kurv that. In the meantime, they're asking questions, giving answers. When in the course of the discussion, the non-Jew says, you should know that I'm actually impressed to see the way that you're asking questions and giving answers, because in my religion, we don't ask questions. And actually, I was brought up religious, and I was practicing for 30 years. When I turned 30, I realized that they weren't ready to answer my questions, so I gave up organized religion. And it's a weight that I'm carrying with me in my heart. So the shliach says, tell me, ask me anything. I'll try to help you, I'll try to answer you. What questions of faith do you have that I can answer? He says, there's a lot of questions. But for years, there's one question that's holding me down. If you can answer this question to me, you will bring out in me my connection to God again. So the question is, how can we say that the world is 5,779 years old if when you test according to science, it comes out that it's so much older? Shlich is flabbergasted. Exactly what this person asked is what he got an answer from the Rebbe 10 minutes before. And when he gave him the Rebbe's answer, it changed the whole meeting. The person said, my weight was lifted from my heart, and he became firm. Everything changed from there. Because the Rebbe bleibt nicht kein Balchoiv, and the Rebbe answers, and the Rebbe gives, and the Rebbe is mashpia. We have to educate our children. That the Rebbe, we speak about the Rebbe in a present way. And we show ourselves, not, again, our children just see us the way we speak. If we live Rebbe in the present, not just stories that happened years ago, a Rebbe of the Amol, a Rebbe of today, and we keep on drilling into our children that the Rebbe alts bavort. If we're in this galus now, the Rebbe gave us the koyach, and the Rebbe spoke about this matzah, and that any moment we're going to have the Hiskashrus. We know, I have to finish with this. I actually have to finish a little early because of Mincha and Fabrengen for the community here in Cincinnati. But there is a letter of the Rebbe dated Hey Oder Sheni, Hey Oder Tovshin Yud. Letters written to the famous Mashpir of Nissen Nemenov. The Nissen Nemenov heard about the stalkos of the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, and he was in pain, such pain, that he had a daughter's wedding coming up, and he couldn't think to make a wedding in the shloishim of the Rebbe, but he was so connected to. So he wrote a letter to our Rebbe saying, Rebbe, should I push off the wedding? I can't be besimcha. And the Rebbe wrote him a letter. I have the letter here. Iglis Kodesh Chele Gimmel, page Reish Mem Beis. And the Rebbe writes to him, I said, I want to tell you a story. The story is that the Rebbe Marash, he would say very short Maimorim. But a lot of times when people would come to the Maimer, the Rebbe Marash would say things that only that person would hear. There were different messages that the Rebbe Marash would say to different people at the same time. And when the Rebbe Rashab knew about this, he wanted to hear these secret messages. And the Rebbe says that the Maimer Basi Legani had Bal Shem Skevert. There are secret messages there because the Rebbe prepared us for everything. And because in the Maimer, always, hey, the Friedrich Rebbe speaks about Chasana, the Rebbe says that's really an answer for you that you have to make your wedding, and he makes his wedding of his daughter. In the Sichos of Tavshin and Aleph and Tavshin and Beis, there are Himmel Dika Oisias. So I just want to finish off with the Oisias the Rebbe spoke Shabbos Parshas Ve'era, Tavshin and Beis, page 266 in Sefer HaSichos, Tavshin and Beis, Chelek Aleph, where the Rebbe says, Ulahoisif, Shayedia should take it from Yad Nichnas Chacham Chavim Siderenu. The knowledge that at any moment the Rebbe is going to come in and look at each and every one of his Chassidim and Mekusharim to test and see where they are holding Beruchnius, is going to awake and bring out in them to be mashlim all their avodah. If we want to inspire our children to be mashlim and to live up to the Rebbe's avodah, that comes from instilling in them the idea that at any moment we're going to have the Hiskashrus of the Rebbe. There's a lot more to talk. I want to wish each and every one of you l'chaim and thank you for participating. And the ikir, v'niske zenza for the Rebbe da lamata, neshama beguf, v'hu yigaleinu now.